There's a truth no one tells you clearly enough. Your silence isn't just the absence of a response. It's a deliberate act of reclaiming emotional access. In a relationship with a narcissist, you're not only controlled by their words, you're controlled by their gaze, your reactions, your emotions, even your mere presence in their mental space. Every time you respond with anger, frustration, or even just an explanation, you unknowingly provide data they use to continue their manipulation. Why? Because narcissists don't operate by guesswork, they operate by information. They observe, they remember, they analyze every detail of your emotional reaction and adjust their tactics accordingly. Your emotional presence is fuel to them, what psychologists call narcissistic supply. And then you stop. You stop replying, you stop explaining. You disappear from their emotional radar. That's the moment they lose access. The narcissist doesn't know what you're thinking. They can't tell if you're hurt, angry, resisting, or completely at peace. And that terrifies them. Not because they care, but because they can't control what they can't read. You might think silence is weakness, that you need to confront or speak your truth. But in the narcissist's world, silence is how you refuse to play their game. And no one can manipulate someone who's no longer on stage. Your silence is a quiet, powerful declaration. I'm no longer here to perform in the script you wrote. Not responding doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've chosen not to be manipulated anymore. They can't control the silence because it's the one thing in the relationship they didn't write the script for. And that leaves them more powerless than any resistance you've ever shown. And if you're sitting there quietly watching this, maybe you've felt that very moment. That first time you chose silence, not because you had nothing to say, but because you had said it too many times and no one truly listened. Remember, your silence is not disappearance. It's the first step toward returning to yourself. If this resonates with you, if you feel like someone is finally giving voice to what you've never dared to name, don't look away, because in the next chapters, you'll come to understand the subtle machinery of narcissistic manipulation, why your silence threatens them so deeply, and most importantly, how to hold your boundaries without ever needing to raise your voice. Hit that subscribe button if you find value in what you're hearing, because there's so much more waiting for you ahead. And don't miss the next part, where we break down how the narcissist uses your emotions as tools of control. We're going deeper, and you deserve to fully understand your own story. To understand why your silence sends the narcissist into panic, we need to look directly at how their psychology works. A narcissist doesn't love you the way you once believed. They don't seek connection the way emotionally healthy adults do. What they crave is power, control, and they find it through your emotions. A narcissist doesn't have a stable sense of self. Inside, there's a constant void that demands to be filled. They don't know who they are without a reflection from someone else. That's why they must constantly extract emotional responses from you to feel like they exist, to feel worthy. They survive by feeding on the emotions of others. And you are their most important source as long as they still have control over you. Here's the key. Every reaction you give has utility to a narcissist. The more vulnerable you are, the more exploitable you become. When you cry, they know they still have influence. When you're angry, they know they still control your emotional state. When you explain, they know you're still seeking their validation, and each of those reactions is a signal telling them whether to manipulate you gently, aggressively, or by deliberately withdrawing. And then you go silent. No response, no explanations, no defending yourself. To outsiders, that might seem weak or passive, but in psychology, this is what we call a withdrawal of control, a move that interrupts the entire manipulation cycle. When you stop giving them responses, you strip away their most valuable data, your emotional feedback, and that throws them into inner crisis. The narcissist doesn't know what you're thinking. They can't tell if you're hurt, resentful, or if you've completely let go. And the worst thing for them is uncertainty. They can't manipulate what they can't read. Your silence severs the connection to their supply. They can't predict your next move, and that's when they lose real power. What's more, they won't accept that loss easily. They'll try to provoke you with vague messages, feigned concern, or even spreading rumors, all just to see if you'll react. None of those actions are about reconciliation. They're tests, checking if the supply has really shut off. The moment you respond, even to defend yourself or criticize, you've just reopened the door for manipulation. The narcissist doesn't need your love, they just need your attention. Even negative attention is still emotional energy, but your silence is the one thing that cuts off that current completely. It doesn't just confuse them, it forces them to face what they've always avoided, their own meaninglessness, when there's no one left to control. And that's exactly why, even when they appear cold, indifferent, or confident, what's actually going on inside is chaos. They can't control you anymore, they can't predict what you'll do, they no longer influence your inner world. And that doesn't just make them angry, it makes them afraid. In the next part, we'll go deeper into that fear, the core wound known as abandonment, the very wound your silence has unknowingly exposed. If this part resonated with your own experience, don't look away. Stay with the video, and if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because knowledge will become your strongest foundation for protecting yourself. If there's one thing a narcissist cannot stand, it's the feeling of being left behind. It's not that you left, it's not that you were angry, it's that you left in silence, without warning, without explanation, without leaving a single window open for them to crawl back in and manipulate you again. The core wound of the narcissist isn't the pain of betrayal, it's the fear of no longer existing in someone else's world. When you go silent, you're sending them a powerful message. You're no longer at the center of my emotional life. For someone with a distorted ego who relies entirely on external validation to feel real, this doesn't just make them angry, it makes them feel invisible. This invisibility awakens a familiar but deeply buried emotion, primal abandonment. In many cases, narcissists develop their defense mechanisms in childhood as a result of being abandoned, rejected, or emotionally neglected. But instead of learning to face and heal those wounds, they chose a path of control to ensure they'd never be hurt like that again. They manipulate to keep people close. They control to avoid being abandoned. They hurt first, just to make sure they're not the ones hurt in the end. But when you stay silent, no chasing, no need for closure, no more pleading, their entire defense system collapses, because for the first time, they no longer control the narrative. This is no longer a relationship, it's the breakdown of a system they once ran. And in that moment, the narcissist is forced to confront the one thing they fear most, helplessness. They can't spin the story, they can't twist the truth, they can't rewrite the script to cast themselves as the victim anymore. And that leaves behind a gaping hole, the fear of being forgotten. There is nothing that terrifies a narcissist more than the thought that you've stopped thinking about them, that you no longer love them, hate them, or even mention them. Your silence isn't punishment. It's a denial of their existence in your world. And to them, that's worse than anger, worse than goodbye. Because a goodbye leaves room for negotiation, for pity, for playing the victim, even for winning you back. But silence? It closes every door. It forces them to confront the truth they've lost control, for good. In the next part, we'll go deeper into the narcissist's actual response to your silence. What they say, what they do, and why every move is a desperate attempt to reclaim a power they've already lost. Don't miss what's coming next, where you'll get a clearer look at the backstage chaos the narcissist desperately tries to hide. The panic, the strategies, and the downfall. When you enter a state of silence, no texts, no replies, no reactions, the narcissist isn't just confused, they perceive it as a personal crisis. And from the moment you disconnect, a familiar pattern of tactics begins to emerge, not because they want reconciliation, but because they're trying to restore their power. The first reaction usually comes fast. Hostility disguised as moral superiority. The narcissist may launch a smear campaign against you. They'll call you confusing, unstable, or ungrateful. This is their way of taking back control of the narrative by making you look bad before you even have a chance to speak. They won't tell others that you went silent to protect yourself. They won't admit that you were emotionally harmed by their manipulation. They'll rewrite the story. You disappeared without reason. You were toxic. You were unlovable. Why do they do this? Because if they can't control you, they'll try to control how others see you. If they no longer have power over your emotions, they'll seek to influence the emotions of everyone else around you. Alongside the smear campaign, they may start sending out feelers, small tests, to see if you're still reactive. It might be a vague message like, "Just wanted to know if you're okay," or "I found something of yours, want me to drop it off?" These messages sound harmless, even kind, but they're really emotional bait. They don't need you to come back. They just need you to respond. A single reply, no matter how small, tells them you still care. And if you still care, they still have a chance to manipulate you. If you don't respond, they may shift tactics. To blame. They'll tell others your silence is a sign of mental instability. They'll imply you're emotionally erratic, unable to communicate, or someone who cuts people off without explanation. The goal isn't to make you feel guilty, it's to provoke you into defending yourself, and the moment you try to explain, you've fallen into the trap they set. For some narcissists, the response is more subtle. They'll quietly find a new supply, someone they can manipulate to fill the void you left. Then they'll make sure you find out. They'll post pictures, flaunt their new relationship, act blissful, not because they're truly happy, but because they want you to feel like you've been replaced. But here's what they didn't expect. You don't react. You don't text back, or you don't clarify your side. You don't try to reclaim your image in the eyes of others. And that's what leads them into total collapse. Everything the narcissist does, from veiled invitations to slanderous gossip, is an attempt to regain emotional control over you. When you remain silent, you don't just block the manipulation, you dismantle their entire psychological system. You're doing what they cannot control. You're showing them that you are no longer within their power circle, and that, not rage, not revenge, is the narcissist's greatest loss. In the next part, we'll break down why you must not break the silence, not even once, and what happens if you do. That's when you'll truly understand why silence isn't just a method of defense, it's the foundation of your full recovery. If what we've shared so far resonates with your story, drop a 1 in the comments below to let us know you're here. The next part will reveal the true value of your silence, not as a shield, but as a declaration of inner power. Many people walk away from a relationship with a narcissist and powerfully choose silence as a way to reset their boundaries. But soon after, under the pressure of internal emotions, loneliness, self-doubt, or whispers from others, they feel the urge to go back, to explain, to get closure, or simply to prove they weren't in the wrong. Here's the problem. The moment you break your silence, even once, the entire boundary system you've built starts to collapse. The narcissist doesn't need you to come back fully. They just need a single response to know they still have influence. That's why their tactics are often subtle, not direct pleas for forgiveness, but seemingly harmless questions, nostalgic emotional triggers, or indirect rumors designed to bait you into speaking. And the moment you react, you unintentionally send the message, "I'm still affected by you." And when the narcissist senses that, they will return, not to love you, but to punish you for taking away their control. One of the hardest truths to accept is this: they don't miss you. They miss the power they had when they were with you. And when you speak again after a period of silence, they feel as though you've reopened the door. They don't need permission. They'll simply step in and pick up right where they left off. But this time, with sharper manipulation, because you dared to challenge them by cutting them off. What's dangerous is that their return won't begin with toxic behavior. It will start with remorse, sweetness, and the illusion of change. But remember, narcissists don't change because they feel guilty. They change strategies to regain control. When you respond, you don't just give them information, you give them hope. Hope that you're still attached, that you haven't fully closed the door, that maybe you're still waiting for an apology, an explanation, something to finally make it make sense. And that's when they become more dangerous than ever, because their next approach will be more calculated, more personalized, and precisely aimed at your most vulnerable spots. You may think you're strong enough to just respond once, but to a narcissist, once is all it takes to restart the entire manipulation cycle. And this time, it'll be harder to escape because you already left, and now you're the one stepping back in. Silence is not avoidance. It's an intentional act to break a long-standing chain of manipulation, and just like a wound needs time to heal, touching it again and again only causes infection to return. You don't need to speak to prove anything. You don't need to close anything with someone who was never truly open. Once you've chosen silence, hold on to it like a promise to yourself, because every time you stay silent, you're not just cutting off the manipulator, you're telling yourself, I deserve a life where I don't have to defend myself every day. Two of the biggest questions that lingers after cutting ties with a narcissist is, are they suffering because they lost me? This question isn't just about curiosity, it's tied to a deep longing for self-worth. After everything you've endured, you want to believe your departure left some kind of impact on them. But to answer this honestly, we have to separate two very different things: the pain of losing you and the pain of losing power over you. A narcissist may experience internal chaos when you go silent, but what they're mourning isn't love. It's the emotional supply you used to provide. They don't miss you as a person. They miss the feeling of being able to hurt you, provoke a reaction, make you doubt yourself. That's what made them feel powerful. When you take all that away through silence, they lose their control center, and that leaves them deeply unsettled. At their core, narcissists do not have a healthy inner world. Their sense of self is built on ever-shifting layers of persona that adapt to their environment and whoever they're interacting with. So when someone who once reflected their power suddenly disappears, they enter a kind of identity crisis. Without you, someone who used to validate their position through emotional reactions, they feel like a piece of their self-peace has gone missing. But here's the caution. The pain they display, if any, is often an ego collapse, not genuine regret. They might post sad updates, speak with nostalgia, or pretend to be healing just to provoke a response from you. But these are the actions of someone who lost control, not the heartbreak of someone who truly loved. If they truly felt pain over losing you, they wouldn't have hurt you enough to force you into silence. If they truly felt remorse, they would approach you not to pull you back, but to honor the boundary you set. But more often than not, the opposite happens. They either ignore you to prove you don't matter, or they try to reconnect to re-establish dominance. Neither comes from love. Both come from the need to repair their wounded ego. Here's what you need to remember. Your silence doesn't hurt them in the way you imagine. It disorients them. It dismantles their ability to manipulate. It removes their access to the emotional power they once fed on. They're not sad because you're gone. They're panicking because they can't control you anymore. And those are two very different things. That's why seeing them doing fine after your silence isn't proof that you didn't matter. They might quickly find a new person to manipulate, but that says nothing about your worth. On the other hand, if they seem to spiral, posting cryptic or gloomy messages, you need to understand that they're fishing for your reaction, not necessarily facing genuine emotional pain. Silence forces the narcissist into a space they cannot manage, their own inner world, and because they've never learned how to regulate their emotions, they will do anything to escape that discomfort, whether it's clinging to someone else, seeking a new supply, or attacking your reputation. But the most beautiful part is this. You're no longer part of that game. You no longer need to wonder if they're hurting. You don't need to react to prove your own existence. You are no longer a piece in their power structure. And that is true healing, when you no longer need anyone to acknowledge your worth in order to know that you deserve peace. Staying silent after leaving a relationship with a narcissist is not easy. Your emotional instincts scream, speak up, explain yourself, demand justice. But you didn't. You chose the harder path, silence. And if you've ever wondered whether that choice meant anything, here's your answer. Silence is the first step in reclaiming yourself. When you remain silent, you're taking back emotional control. No longer can someone else push your anger button, trigger guilt, or manipulate your compassion like flipping a switch. You shift from being controlled to being in control. Silence isn't the absence of sound, it's the powerful presence of inner freedom. You also reclaim mental space to listen to yourself. During your time with a narcissist, you became accustomed to placing their needs above your own. Every decision revolved around how they might react. Every feeling was filtered through their perception. Silence breaks that cycle. For the first time in a long while, you can hear your own voice, without it being denied, judged, or distorted. More than that, you reclaim time. Not just physical time, but time to live authentically. No more explaining your every move. No more bracing for the emotional explosion of a conversation. No more walking on emotional glass just to preserve a false peace. Silence opens up a new, safe space, one where you can breathe, reflect, and heal. Most importantly, you begin to rebuild your self-worth. In a relationship with a narcissist, you were taught that your feelings were irrational, your memories were unreliable, and your value depended on how they viewed you. But when you stay silent and still stand strong, you send yourself a profound message. I don't need to be accepted to exist. You begin to reclaim the ability to validate yourself, something the narcissist tried to strip away. You also relearn a vital skill that was eroded in the relationship, the ability to tolerate uncertainty. You were trained to always respond, always explain, always clarify. But silence teaches you to sit with the unknown, to not be ruled by the need to know now, fix now, or resolve everything. It shows you that some questions don't need answers, and some endings don't need justifications. And finally, perhaps most importantly, silence allows you to step out of the role the narcissist assigned you. When you no longer react, you're no longer the villain, the weak one, the troublemaker, or any character they scripted you to be. You're no longer their extension. You're your own separate sovereign being, no longer bound to the story they crafted. You reclaim the right to write your own story in your own voice. Silence is not the end, it's the beginning. Not a rejection of others, but a reaffirmation of yourself. Not the end of a relationship, but the opening of a chapter built on truth and freedom. Staying silent after leaving a narcissistic relationship is a powerful decision, but it's also a lonely one. Many people assume that once you walk away from a toxic dynamic, everything gets easier. But the truth is, the period after you choose silence is often where your inner strength is tested most. The first challenge comes from within. It's the internal questions that loop through your mind. Did I overreact? Was I unfair to them? Should I have said something? These aren't random doubts. They're the aftermath of prolonged manipulation. You were conditioned to believe your emotions were irrational, your reactions were the problem, and that your silence was an act of cruelty. But the truth is, you don't need to speak to be a good person, and you are not responsible for healing the person who hurt you. The second challenge comes from the world around you. It's likely the narcissist has already rewritten the narrative, painting you as the heartless one who walked away without explanation. Some people, even those you trusted, may not understand why you chose silence over confrontation. The truth is, not everyone can recognize subtle forms of manipulation. Being misunderstood can make you feel isolated, wounded, and tempted to break your silence to defend your name. But know this, the price of proving yourself is your inner peace. Those who truly understand, you don't need an explanation. And those who don't, won't be swayed by one. Another challenge is the emptiness that follows withdrawal. In a relationship with a narcissist, you lived in a constant state of emotional intensity, anger, hope, hurt, fear. When you cut off contact completely, you fall into a kind of stillness. At first, that silence may feel like relief, but over time it can feel like a void. You may mistake it for something missing, when in reality you're simply adjusting to normalcy. You don't need emotional chaos to feel alive, and learning to feel okay in stability, that is a true sign of recovery. You may also face guilt for abandoning the other person. Narcissists are masterful at weaponizing your empathy. They once convinced you they can't live without you, that no one understands them like you do, or that you were the only light in their life. These weren't declarations of love. They were tactics to keep you hooked. And when you go silent and they can no longer cling to you, they'll try to make you feel like the one who walked away heartlessly. To move past this, you must remember, you cannot heal someone who uses their pain as a tool of control. So how do you survive these challenges? First, you build an inner validation system. Journal, go to therapy, or simply create a sacred space where you can speak honestly with yourself every day. Write down why you chose silence, the pain that led to it, and what you truly feel now. This not only strengthens your resolve, it reminds you of how far you've come and helps you stop doubting your truth. Second, limit interactions with those who don't support your boundaries. Not everyone deserves access to your healing journey. Keeping distance from those who don't understand is not selfish, it's self-protection. Spend your energy on those who respect your silence as a wise and courageous choice. Lastly, build new habits that make you feel free and whole. Learn a new skill, move your body, find a community that shares your values. These things will fill the space the narcissist once occupied with something real, something nourishing. Silence doesn't mean you're running away, it means you're refusing to return to what once shattered you. And every day you hold that boundary is a day you rewrite who you are, not through the lens of the one who made you forget, but through the truth of the person you're becoming. The narcissist may act like they don't care when you leave. They may pretend to be happy, flaunt a new relationship, or give the illusion that they're thriving after your disappearance. But behind that carefully crafted facade lies a truth they desperately don't want you to know. Your silence exposes what they've always tried to hide, the emptiness inside. A narcissist doesn't operate as a person with a solid sense of self. They don't have a stable internal identity. They live through reflection. They need others to feel valuable, powerful, significant. Every relationship, every emotional reaction they provoke is a mirror that reflects their existence back to them. When you react with anger, pain, or pleas, you're still holding up that mirror. But when you go silent, that mirror disappears, and that's what they cannot tolerate. The truth is, the narcissist isn't just afraid of losing you. They're afraid of losing the image of themselves they once saw through you. They fear having no one left to control, no one left to manipulate, no one left to prove they're special enough to cause someone else pain. In their eyes, you were never just a person, you were a reflection of their power. And when that reflection vanishes, they're forced to face what's left inside, a void filled with chaos and insecurity. That is the truth they never want you to understand. Because if you understand that, you'll stop feeling guilty. You'll stop wondering, are they hurting without me? You'll stop trying to heal someone who never intended to change. They don't want you to know that they needed you more than you ever needed them. Not out of love, but because you were once living proof that their distorted ego still had power. Every tear you shed, every burst of anger, every desperate explanation made them feel important, not as a human being, but as a force capable of manipulating the emotions of others. When you go silent, you refuse to keep playing that role. You shatter the dependency loop, the one where they measure their self-worth by how much control they have over someone else. You stop being the mirror they need to hold themselves together. And here's what they fear most, that you realize your worth without needing their validation. Because when that happens, they lose their place in your life. No more entry, no more influence. And to a narcissist, that's worse than being hated, it's being forgotten. Your silence is more than a boundary, it's a declaration. I no longer need you to know who I am. And that's the one truth they never want you to realize, because once you do, the game is over You've walked a path that not many have the courage to face. You left not with a battle cry, but with grace. You chose silence not because you were weak, but because you were exhausted by the senseless noise. And in choosing not to speak, you made a declaration louder than any words you could have said. I am no longer controlled. I am awake. In the narcissist's world, where every reaction from you was once used against you, silence is the one thing they can't twist. They can't manipulate what they can't grasp. They can't control someone who's chosen to stand beyond their reach. And most of all, they can't bear the truth that you're still standing. Without them, without an apology, without closure. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your silence. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Your quiet is the most complete expression of inner power there is. I am no longer someone else's reaction. I am my own voice. Remember this. Weak people scream to gain control. Strong people simply walk away. No noise, no drama, no regret. And it's that silence that shakes the very foundation of the narcissist's false sense of power. And you didn't go silent to punish. You went silent to heal. You're not stepping back. You're standing still, reclaiming yourself. And with every quiet day that passes, you're rewriting the story of your life. No longer in the voice of the manipulator, but with the steady whisper of someone who has rediscovered their true worth. This journey isn't easy, but if you've made it this far, if you're still here, listening, feeling, reflecting, then know this. You've already done what many never dare to do. You walked away, and you're still standing. No applause needed. No audience required. Just you, and the peace you were always worthy of.